Welcome to the North Texas Rotary March 28th, 23 E-Club meeting. We'll begin with an invocation with Linda.
As we gather here this evening as members of Rotary, we pray that we are ever mindful of opportunities to render our services to fellow citizens and to our communities, to our country, and indeed to all countries and peoples. Bless our fellowship today. Amen.
And
Amen.
David, you want to do the pledge?
David? I don't have a flag.
We could just imagine a flag.
Okay.
It's not that hard to stretch.
A pledge allegiance
To the
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the one thing I wanted to go, because I see Jessica's here. Jessica, they sent me your Paul Harris pin. I just got it. So do me a favor. Send me your mailing address. Put it in the chat box. And
I will do that right now.
And I will send it to you because it's not mine.
Also, what level is this? It's a ruby, but what level? Is that 5?
It says Redstone label pin. I don't know what that means. PHF, Redstone level pin.
Okay, I think it's Paul Harris. I think it's level 5. So
Okay, I don't know the levels. What are the levels?
Well, it goes all the way up to 9, and then major dome.
Oh, okay.
So essentially it means I've donated about 5,000.
Oh, that's very impressive.
Yeah.
Good for you.
She's going to soon be another, and you do Paul Harris Society, where she does the $82 a month. So
Yes,
Okay.
I do 100 a month.
100 a month.
So I get a Paul Harris every year.
Oh, that's really nice. I was going to encourage, not everyone can do that, but those of you who are here, if you could do even $100 a year, once a year,
Yeah.
it adds up. It doesn't have to, it's great if you can do more. It's certainly, Rotary appreciates that, but if you just do something, the money.
Somebody wants in, Howard.
Yeah, the money goes to Rotary functions. Oh, Robin's here. The money goes to, there's the baby. So Rotary functions, and it's a good thing to do. So we appreciate Jerica for doing what she did. She went above
And I do
and
want to say,
beyond.
it also comes back to the club because
Yes,
we're
it
able
does.
to
Yes.
file for grants as
Yes.
a club, and
Yes.
we've been able to get grants money back, and it's based on how much we contribute to the foundation, and then that money comes back.
I'll just open
so yeah,
the
in
box.
Polio Now, women's initiatives. Look at that, my first red one.
Just a minute. Hold on. Let me get a picture of it. Oh.
Trying to get it to focus.
Well, just a minute. Okay. And hold your hand up, Jerica, like you're getting it. All the way up to the top of the screen. There. Okay. Okay. Also, if members, if we can take $10 from each member's membership and do it to the Paul Harris Foundation, then that way we get a certificate that says that we're 100% Paul Harris.
That's very helpful, Rory. I do it once a year. You can do it once a month. You can do it once a year. I basically take $100 once a year. I set it aside. We have dues. They're about $200.
And $50.
And $50.
Yeah.
And then I take $100 for Paul Harris. And I just do one every year. And just every year I put another $100. And if you could do more, that's fantastic. But not everyone can. But if you can, it really does help. It helps the club. It helps the Rotary do a lot of very good things with the money. They do great things. It's one of the best
also,
charities.
Howard, if we can do just a little bit to the polio plus, because we had a case of polio in Pakistan this month. This is the first time since August there's been any. So we're starting over again for our 4 years or 3 years.
Oh, that's a shame.
And you have to be polio free for 3 years. So we're starting over again. This was I think, a 5-year-old in Pakistan. So if you can donate any amount to the polio fund, and you can do all of this by credit card on Rotary.org. So,
But do sign in as if you need help signing in to Rotary International, I can help you with that because we want to make sure that our club gets the credit for any
Actually,
donations you
Davin's
make.
having trouble. Davin Michaels, he's a new member.
I sent a text to him. I talked to RI this afternoon. I've got him in there now, they said.
Okay, because Davin's a good guy, and Davin's someone you want to support. He's very successful in business, and he's just a nice person. I know him very well for about 15, 20 years, so he'll be a good
And he's
member.
from Puerto Rico, right?
Right.
He is now. He wasn't when I met him. I think he lived in Vegas, and he bought a nice mansion on the water. He sold his
wow.
company, bought a yacht. He's doing very well.
We can all go visit him.
There we
He's
go.
doing very well. Very well. We should all be doing as well as him. We'd be very, very happy with our lives. Let me just put it that way.
Okay.
But he's a
Okay.
good guy. He earned it. He worked really hard. He didn't just
Yeah.
it didn't fall in his lap. I know how hard he worked. He put in the hours. He put in the time, and he did a very good job at what he did. And that's all you could do in life is be good at what you
Yeah.
do.
Okay, the only other thing I have is like Saturday, Dave and I attended the leadership training. Let's see, Chris had a double booking that day and Jack was sick. So, but we did go, David went to the grant certification, and I think we have to have one more person go to another one. So,
After we were through, they said you've got to have 2 people from your
yeah,
club.
2 people from your club have to attend. So you
Oh,
might check
okay.
with them, Jerica, if you can
Okay.
do it online. All of this is online, they say. So
Okay.
Okay.
anyway,
All
That
the
helps. It
sessions
does
will
help.
be
Yeah.
available online soon. if
yeah.
Not
Okay.
already.
So
Is there any
anyway,
other
okay.
any more
So
business?
Charlotte is online.
Is there any new
Robin,
business?
Okay. Okay, I'm finished.
Okay, that's usually a good sign. Does anyone else have any new business or
Oh, who's the iPhone person? Oh, that's Wendy.
Wendy?
Okay.
Oh, good. Wendy's here.
Yeah.
Let me go quickly into our speaker's bio so I could tell you a little about him, and then when we start speaking, you have the option of doing PowerPoint or not if you choose to. And we prefer something 20-30 minutes. I mean, if you go a little over, it's okay, but that's generally what we do, 20-30 minutes. So the topic is commodity markets, their failure modes and algorithmic remedies. And I have an intro script. Noah Healy, is it Healy or Helly? How do you pronounce it? I'll say Healy, is a market designer and game theorist working on better economic systems. After training in nuclear engineering, he worked for tech startups at the peak of the dot-com boom, becoming fascinated by the mathematics of information and computation, led to patent work on a better commodity market design. That actually sounds interesting. So, we are recording. We usually mute ourselves when you speak so you don't get a lot of background noise, but we can always unmute to ask questions at the end or if you need questions answered, but we do that just so you don't have a lot of noise going on while you're talking. It's yours. If you want to use the screen on the bottom in the middle, it says share screen. Just click on that and you can show your PowerPoints if you choose to. And if you don't, that's up to you as well. Okay. Noah, it's your time.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't really have a PowerPoint. I've built a few different PowerPoints over the years, but I've never built one to go along with me talking with it, so I don't have anything like that. So let's get into the basics. The commodity markets that we have today use a system that goes back about 800 years. And my contention is that that system was pretty much irrevocably broken by the rise of personal computing and the internet. The basic issue is that the markets are essentially information processing systems. Their job is to take in all the noise of the various economic opinions, filter out the signal from that noise, and then broadcast that signal across entire industries to allow the supply and demand side of those industries to coordinate themselves effectively. The problem is that we have now developed a vast panoply of new algorithms in information processing and creation, and there's now vastly more noise to contend with than has ever existed before. And so the destabilizing markets, the growth in the financial sector, and some of these industrial hiccups that we've seen are essentially just all symptoms of this deeper problem that the actual algorithm that we use to underlie markets doesn't work in the presence of communication technology. So we can give up the internet, or we can accept, that we have to fix marketplaces. I'm in camp number 2, and my proposal is essentially based on the idea that information is its own important part of any particular deal, and that in consequence of that, we can actually restructure markets from a two-sided buyer-seller paradigm to a three-sided forecaster, producer, consumer paradigm, where each of those markets enables people to do one thing and do it well, and those three systems will all converge toward each other. So people that produce get to see a world where they see what current prices are sitting at and what the projections for the future look like, and decide how much they would want to actually contribute at each of those stages. People who consume see exactly the same things that producers, and decide how much they would want to buy at each of those stages. And meanwhile, both of those parties plus other third parties can enter as forecasters and provide information about where they think the market is heading in the future, and through a system of integral equations, effectively
She's not showing up.
central processor can
She's,
carry through the necessary calculations
there's
to
nothing
integrate
here
those
to click on.
opinions into
she's not here to click on.
single sort of price curves for each industry. So
But I don't
what you
have
get
anything to
is
click on to let her in.
effectively a spot market that incorporates all the safety
Her
of
name
a
isn't
fully
there.
hedged
I
futures
can't
market,
click on it.
but without any of the costs or risks associated or
Okay.
complexity associated with attempting to actually design a hedging strategy in a futures market. I wrote some code to test out this particular system, and it turns out that with a few hundred lines of code, it's possible for the computer I'm currently speaking to you on, which is not a particularly impressive laptop, to be able to do all the back-end processing for every commodity market that presently exists on Earth, and probably 10 times that many if new commoditized industries were to come online using this particular algorithm. And so once I realized that this was that superior to the systems that are in place right now, I started working on the problem of how to bring them into adoption, which is what has been consuming most of my time for most of the last decade. As Howard mentioned in the intro, this is patent pending. The process through the patent office has become very interesting, to say the least. I might be the first person in U.S. history to have a patent accepted and have the patent office reject its own acceptance twice. On both occasions, their reasons were internally contradictory. In the first case, I I had to work with my attorneys for about a year to point that out to them, although they did acknowledge that was the case. In the second case, they just gave us an objection that made no sense on its face, and they said that it made no sense on its face, but I was told that the people who told them to do the objection also didn't have any reasonable reason for the objection, so they just put something down to fill in the blank, essentially. So that case is heading to court to see what a judge thinks about what's going on. I don't know what's going to happen once we get to there. Alternatively, overseas, I'm pursuing an open source strategy. So if people are familiar with Creative Commons, this idea has some code attached to it that's under a Creative Commons license that would be superseded by the patent inside the United States and other jurisdictions thereof. But for people living outside the United States, they can grab the code, grab the white paper, set up markets, and that's a lot of what I do is reach out around the world to try to find people who are in industries that either have existing commodity markets which are lagging, or are in industries that could generate commodity markets that would be of great benefit to them, and sell them on a much cheaper, more transparent system to get the ball rolling. I had a few interesting conversations just this week, and I'm working with, at this point, about half a dozen different projects, a couple in the crypto space and a few others in other spaces to see who will finally go first. And that's pretty much where my journey has taken me to so far. I've been doing podcasts for the last year to get more used to explaining this idea to general audiences, and to increase my reach. And that's what brought me to you folks. And I'm much better at conversations than I am at exposition or writing. So if there's any questions out there, I'd be happy to answer them.
So what specifically does the program do? Does it tell people where the market is now and what the projections are for the future based on real-time data? Is that basically what you're talking about?
So what my system does is the operator who's setting this up decides on a schedule of trades. And the notion is that you would schedule windows of trade that would be large enough that they're logistically relevant to your industry. So if you're talking about, say, grid electricity, that would be like 5, 10, 15-minute time windows. If you're talking about international oil trades, that might be 1 or 2 week time windows. And over each trading window, the price is absolutely fixed. And so we just have a calendar of the current and all future trading windows. And what people are allowed to do is speculate on what they think the price will turn out to be in future trading windows. So this is essentially a negotiation between all of the buyers and all of the sellers, but it's an ongoing negotiation over every single time slice into the indefinite future. So trying to win, say, the middle of next week doesn't really get you anything, because that will just move people's preferences forward and backwards in time away from where you're winning. So in addition to having to come up with the right price between buyers and sellers on any given day, you also have to match to the neighboring days and so on. And so that creates the smoothing effect that you would desire, economically out of the marketplace.
So what do they ultimately see? What the likely price will be versus what the current price will be?
So the current price is fixed and anybody can act on that. The forward prices are all existing projections. And so what they get to see is where the current projections are standing today. And they also get to see what the set of integrated guesses were that led to the price being there. So you can see who was bidding, what they thought prices were looking like, and what's going on. You get to see the history of that. So what the computer program basically just needs to do is be able to store, retrieve, and display all this information. And for when there's disagreements about where prices are going, they need to carry out the integration steps, which is a little daunting for people, but fairly straightforward for computers.
So at what point do they actually know with some confidence that what that future looks like is relevant in terms statistically relevant? It's not a very high level of fluctuation, that this is, you have a range, in statistics you have like a deviation from the norm. At what point do you have confidence that what you're looking at is a realistic number and not something that could radically fluctuate? Is there any way, is there a time to that, or is there
after 3 rounds of voting, if you will, the likelihood is that the forward capital planning window for the industry will be more or less completely worked out. Essentially, what's going on is that you're doing a wisdom of crowds thing with multiple sampling. So once you've done one sampling of the group, everyone now gets to update where they think the group belongs based on their knowledge of where everybody in the group is. And so your effective sample size grows exponentially every time you turn the crank on this thing. So you need roughly 50 participants to get into a fairly good place compared to existing margin costs of existing markets in the first iteration. But after the first iteration, just sort of everybody's random guess and wherever that happens to shake loose, the next period goes by, and now you get everybody's guess based on everybody else's guess. The third one, you get everybody's guess based on everybody else's guess based on everybody else's guess. That 50 is now up into a sample size of about 1/8 of a million, and your variation is shrunk down to pretty small, all things considered. And at that point, the only reason for a major deviation is an unforeseen regional or industry-wide, disaster.
Like a war or
yeah,
weather event or
major natural disaster type issues. Mere weather events in a local area won't really cover it. And in those events, effectively what this does is recover across the entire industry simultaneously. So you can never sort of get caught outside the way existing markets would. So the players who are staying inside the game, while there is obviously always risk for the future, what this is doing is it's allowing all the players to operate at the margin, which in commodity space is effectively ideal.
I know there's 2 dimensions in any particular tool, which is validity and reliability. And so reliability is how well is the person using the tool. If I'm doing a Rorschach test or a Wechsler and I have no training, although it's a very reliable test, it's going to give me very bad results because I don't know what I'm doing. That's reliability. And then validity is if someone actually does know what they're doing, how accurately can we predict with that tool? So what have you found in your tool to be like the components of reliability and validity? Are people being trained to make the tool very, very valid? Are they getting enough understanding of the tool and what it's doing and how it works so that the insights that they're getting are accurate? They're not just, guessing because they don't really understand the system well enough? Because that could be a variable.
It could be. So that's something that actual empirical data is something I'm still looking for, because we're still trying to get people to set these marketplaces up. However, there is a cost associated with that speculative action. And essentially what I've done is figured out how to measure how much information is in a speculation. Basically, you take the log size difference of one proposed price to the existing proposed price. And then I use a sort of parimutuel-like measurement to compare that to all the existing information that's currently in to scale out how much it costs to change things. So what this does is essentially creates a hyper learning algorithm that will assess and reward or punish people for validity and invalidity. So people who are invalid that want to enter into the system will largely be entering noise into the system and will essentially be paying the system the rewards necessary to get other people to remove their noise from the system.
And how would you know whether the information is coming from the noise or the people who are accurately entering the information? How would you make that distinguish between the two sets of data?
That's distinguished at the point of sale. So the eventual prices that are settled upon are then exposed to people who can choose to buy or sell, and those people can choose either to do so or not to do so. When they do so, they are contributing to the prize fund because a portion of the commission costs go to that overhead. When they choose not to do so, that punishes the entire prize fund en masse. And what that does is actually lowers the cost of coming in and rechanging things. So in the case of either unanticipatable disaster or some sort of madness of crowds where everybody just shares a delusion, eventually individual businesses will just say, well, I can't live like that, and step back. And at that point, a windfall is created to reintroduce sanity to the system. At the same time, for those edge users, because this system allows the operator to essentially dictate the entire market overhead cost, which is an emergent factor of existing markets, you can set that cost to be significantly lower than existing market overheads. So the US government, for example, estimates that the transaction commodity overhead was on the order of $800 billion some 9 years ago per year. The CME Group, which is the premier commodity exchange, in the country, their third quarter earnings last year were about $1 billion, which is pretty typical for them. So the market overheads are effectively 200 or more times the actual direct transaction fees and other types of incomes that the markets are gaining. So what this can do is simultaneously cut those market overheads, which has an exponential effect to the bottom line of actual commodity producers. So if you're producing commodity at a 10% margin and somebody takes 5% off the top, then you have your business just got 50% increase in its profits, and the operators could also take home a larger share of the remaining pie. So the current spreads are so insane that you could lower the overhead costs by a factor of 10 and up the market share of that revenue by a factor of 10 and still have room left over to incentivize and reward speculative activity.
Is it bearing fruit for you? Is it, as far as actual practical real world outcomes, are you finding it to be a reliable predicted that they're developing confidence and using it, or is it just more in the launch stages?
I'm in the launch stages right now. I'm still looking for partners. Sadly, launching markets is
It's hard. Yeah, business
it's
is
hard
It's
and
hard.
expensive.
So yes, I relate very well to that. That's the biggest problem in building a business. Is takes a lot of money and there's a lot of risk, and a lot of people don't want the risk and don't have the money. So you're doing something that needs to be done. I hope it works out for you. It's difficult though. You're right. The rewards are great, but the challenges are very great also. That's why the rewards are great. It is hard. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, so I'm essentially relying on a licensing model to find people who are in position to do those
Because
parts.
it's good for them. If it works, the reward for them is great enough that the upfront risks are low enough that the back end benefits are great enough that they outweigh the risks. That's how you're doing it, I assume.
That's the plan. Yes.
Right. So even if they lose, they didn't lose that much, and they don't feel like they made a mistake. It was an experiment. But if they
Right.
win, then they feel, look, we really did a smart thing. We're going to make a lot more money now.
Exactly.
Okay, that's what I thought I was hearing.
So, Noah, real quick, you said you've been working on this for a decade. I mean, technology has just blossomed so much even the last 5 years. So now you have, all these data analytic programs, artificial intelligence. I mean, how did you have to adapt and, grow and develop your system with these changes?
Essentially, in no way whatsoever. So I've been deeply interested in computational mathematics since 2001, and so part and parcel of this is the recognition that AI, as presently presented, isn't actually a useful tool and isn't on the road to becoming a useful tool. Mm-hmm. So things like ChatGPT are toys, and you can buy desktop steam engines that will, you can light a candle and they'll just move a piston back and forth. And the fact that that's a toy does not sort of negate the fact that steam engines can produce vastly more work than human beings can, and can, power intercontinental train, systems and so on. Mm-hmm. So what I was originally thinking about was the problem of finding consensus on networks, with the idea that we would need to find ways to collaborate between machine sensory systems, human sensory systems, machine thought, if we ever got there, human thought, which we're already having problems with, and the internet model of repeating our ordinary modes of social interaction certainly weren't going to allow us to bring machine systems on board with us, and were also leading to a great amount of strain in human interpersonal activity, which we see in all sorts of political and social issues that are rampant and growing around the world. And so what I developed was, if you will, a meta-algorithm for allowing systems that are capable of generating opinions to generate collectively valuable opinions. And so instead of having its own sort of approach or opinion, like the algorithmic description of the existing markets is a hill climbing optimizer. But what my system does is it's a consensus finding optimizer. And so what it's trying to do is behave as intelligently in each aspect of its behavior as the most intelligent of its participants in that aspect of its behavior. So if OpenAI or Google DeepMind Group or some group you've never heard of that's playing around in their basements reveals a market predictor AI that has some real teeth to it and is of value. What this system would do is bring that on board, moderate it through all other systems, including, individual businesses, and create a super AI that would be able to function at a much higher level. So unless foundational changes to the nature of our understanding of computational mathematics come in, which isn't impossible, but that's what I keep abreast of. These sort of technological switches aren't really going to do much on this particular idea.
I think also the area that AI isn't very good with current data. It's more reflective, but it's not like if you asked it about the Ukrainian war, it wouldn't know what you're talking about. It's not keeping up with current events. It's more.
Well, so I'll moderate that. The current ChatGPT is getting its impressive behaviors through having incredibly large models, which take a very long time to train. And so they cannot keep up with current events because they can't keep up with current events. But just last week, Stanford released a paper suggesting that they had come up with a way to train a model trainer. So they claim the ChatGPT 3, I believe, has something like 300 or 500 billion parameters. They claim that they've released a 5,200 parameter system that encapsulates large amounts of what ChatGPT does and can be trained up to specialize, essentially. So that would allow personal machine level training. They did, on a top-end graphics card, they did a 5-hour full specialization. So at that point, you could be as up to date as like the nightly news or something like that.
Oh, that's a big change, though.
That is, yes. There's also a brand new paper out about the prospective ChatGPT 4, and that 500 billion, that might be ChatGPT 4. ChatGPT might be only like 100 billion, but ChatGPT 4 is a lot bigger and is demonstrating so far even better behaviors, although they did note that it had difficulty reasoning about hyper-exponential functions. So e to the some x-like power. It couldn't understand what those meant, and when the human tried to explain it, the mistake it was making, it couldn't put that together for itself. So there's still a lot of work to be done, but I mean, these things can pass bar exams. These things can pass MCATs. Computers are already better at translating between languages than we are. They're better at reading radiology, X-rays than we are. The systems that are better than us at those things cannot stably be used to do those things commercially and culturally. And that's where what the kinds of things I like to think about is what sort of systems would we have to build and what sort of conventional behaviors would we have to adopt as people to be able to actually bring those changes on board, because I see that as really the key challenge presenting to people these days, because the systems that we have are either have been disintegrated by the degree of communication and information we have, or are rapidly disintegrating in the face of that. And I can't see any reason to believe that they would be able to persist over any reasonable time frame.
Okay. Well, thank you. That's interesting. So you're kind of on the cutting edge of something interesting.
I really hope so, yes.
That's always fun. That's a good thing. I appreciate you sharing that with us. It's a little over the top for what we normally do technically, but I found it interesting. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not, it wasn't light, let's put it that way, but it wasn't intended to be either. But I thought it was interesting. It gave us some things to think about, and I'm kind of seeing sort of like a statistical model that takes real-time data from people who understand the problem and smooths out the curves of what they're looking at and analyzing to get a more accurate picture from the collective data than an individual would be able to get. Does that sound about like what you're doing mathematically?
That's a very interesting aspect. I'm sure most of you have heard of normal curves or Gaussians before. There's another curve that you may not have heard of called a Cauchy curve. Cauchys are the least well-behaved indefinite distributions. They look very much, they're basically, a hump that goes back down and stuff like that. But instead of being a sort of thin-tailed, so e to the x squared is the characteristic of Gaussian. The characteristic of the Cauchy distribution is 1 over x squared. And the Cauchy distribution, rather intriguingly, has no moments. So it doesn't have an average. It has a median, but it doesn't have an average. It doesn't have a variance. It doesn't have kurtosis. All of those values are infinite for the Cauchy distribution.
Oh, okay.
So if you're doing any kind of Monte Carlo methods or stuff like that with Cauchy distributions, they'll basically blow up your model guaranteed eventually. However, there's one kind of corralling that Cauchy distributions can cope with, and that's the sample median of sample medians, which is not the sample mean of sample means that turn into normal distributions that are all nice. With Cauchy distributions, it doesn't matter how many of them you add up, they never turn into normal distributions. But these median things do work, and it turns out that the formula for sample median of sample medians, which is somewhat analogous to the central limit theorem with the Gaussian, is this really gnarly integral that actually simplifies very nicely when you plug the Cauchy distribution into it, into a relatively straightforward and simple integral. And that's where the number 50, it turns out that actually 49 is about where that number of Cauchy distributions starts having a nice behavior. So my model is based on the notion that everyone who will speculate has Cauchy distributed information. So the worst possible picture of the world. None of them can think about or consider the future in any way, and none of them can communicate with anyone else that's in the system at any time. And since humans can better all three of those, I hope, but certainly the final two, this mathematically behaves itself very nicely in ways that, if you're familiar with the options pricing formula, I'm gonna get this wrong. Schiller, but it's not Kurt Schiller because they're the real estate guys. I'm not great with
Oh, we would not know the
You're
difference.
going so far. There's a reason I didn't major in statistics. But I get what you're, the concept. So basically you're a mathematician and you're creating a mathematical decision model to help people make better predictions about markets that they want to invest in and have a higher reliability, that the data that they're getting is more reliable than the traditional tools they've been using. Is that kind of simplify what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
I got it.
Okay, that part I get. I understand the math, but I'm not a mathematician. I took a lot of mathing because I was a science major, but it was never my strength. But I could see that is your strength, and I think you're over a lot of people. I'm not trying to be rude, but I think you're over a lot of people's heads on the technical side. I think on the application side, it's interesting. But on the technical side, it's like trying to explain calculus to a third grader. And it's not that it has no value, but will they grasp it? And
Yeah,
I'm putting myself at that level, by the way. I'm not
Right.
knocking anyone else. So just
Yes, I still backslide. I'm sorry. Like when you introduced the math, I got very excited.
I do see what you're doing, but you are here, and I think mathematically, I think the message is very interesting, and what you're doing is fascinating. But I think the technical side is over the heads of probably 90% of it. I don't know, maybe everyone. I know it's over my head, and I'm pretty good at numbers. So
that has been an issue. Speaking of AI, I wrote a white paper some years ago, and just to play around with some of the AI tools that are out there, I tried feeding that white paper into some of these AI tools that like will rewrite things in a different tone and so on. And I'm afraid they're not up to the task.
I was wondering. Actually, I was thinking about that. I was going to ask you, but that makes sense. I could see why. I remember one of the things they said about those AIs is one of their weakest points is math. That is still one of their Achilles heels, and your math is so above where the normal person's math is, which is a good thing. That's why you're doing what you do, but it's so above what normal people have learned. They maybe learned standard deviation or chi-square or correlation, but most people haven't gone to ketosis curves and things like that. And I never heard of that. And I've taken a lot of math. I've had advanced algebra, calculus, statistics. So you are way ahead of 99%. But that's a good thing. That means that you're on the cutting edge of something. Your biggest challenge, in my opinion, is communicating it to a normal person who isn't where you are, and making it clear enough that they see the value and are willing to invest the time needed to get the value out of what you have. I would say that's going to be one of your biggest challenges.
Absolutely. That's been my biggest challenge, and I count myself as quite fortunate that I've even found half a dozen people who are sort of willing to sit still.
What you got is great. It's you're going to have to think of a way to explain it to normal people who aren't mathematically as sophisticated as you, so they grasp it and want it. I think that's your biggest challenge, I would think.
I did come up with an analogy. I was talking to a young lady this morning. Have any of you ever done the find a balance of a straw or a rod trick, or a baseball bat? That's another fun one.
Like a fulcrum?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you take any object that's sort of like, Polish shaped, and hold it up on two fingers and then move your fingers gently towards each other, the center of balance of that object will remain between your fingers at all times. And so essentially what happens is if one of the fingers is getting too close to the center of balance, then that will change the balance point of the mass, and the friction between your finger and the thing will change, allowing the other finger to essentially catch up. So you can do this. It's a cool little trick to find the balance point of any pole-like shape.
That's interesting. I never heard of that.
Okay, well, that's a basic physical fact of the universe that you can impress.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Apparently random people with, but I used to impress children with it all the time.
Yeah, no, that would be impressive. I appreciate what you did. I think it's very interesting, and I think it has a lot of potential. I could see the challenges. There's some real challenges here, and getting the right people who are sophisticated enough to use the tool correctly and get the value from it and pay for it, versus people who need the tool. There'll be a lot more people who need it than people who understand it and are ready to take the leap. So that's your biggest. I'm going to say your challenge isn't the tool, it's marketing, and you need to. This is just kind. I do a lot of marketing myself. I'm just trying to help you. So I want you to think more in terms of the marketing, not the tool. When I have the world's record for speed reading, so I have a very good program. And I was with Dan Kennedy, and Dan said, "You got a problem." He says, "You got the best program in the world on speed reading, so you think people are going to buy it?" He says, "They're not going to buy it." He says, "They don't care that you have the best program on speed reading. The problem you have is marketing." He says, "You have to be able to convince them that your mousetrap is something that they need." And he says, "Sometimes when you have the best, you presume because it's so good, everyone will see it, and they'll appreciate it, and they'll recognize it, and that means you're going to make a lot of money because they're going to buy the best mousetrap." But he says, that isn't how it works. He says, the real challenge is to create that marketing need, that marketing desire, and communicating it to people who do need it but don't recognize it. I'm just throwing that out. I thought that might help you.
No, yeah, that's I think on point, and that's really the kind of primary challenge that's been driving me, is trying to figure out how to get there.
I think a book that'll help you. This is a new book. It's not my book. You know Russell Brunson probably, if you're in marketing at all.
That name is familiar, yeah.
Okay, his copywriter is Jim Edwards. I was with Rob, and Jim Edwards has just created a new program that creates marketing copy.
I was just gonna say Jim Edwards with that genie. I was doing that today because I have his program. It's amazing. It's it doesn't take near as long as what it used to doing the marketing part. And then I was in the ClickFunnels 2.0 today, earlier too, doing some things for my website, and it reworded using the AI for me a lot better, a lot faster. And I'm like, I should have just typed it in that instead. But no, Jim Edwards is going to be really good to be able to help out with that marketing.
And he'll help you.
The other thing I would suggest is, are you doing like Facebook Lives, or are you doing any lives on your current platforms for social media, talking with people about this? Because I know John Maxwell has a book out, The 16 Undeniable Laws of Communication. That may be helpful to help, Howard has it, with the market, because he just did a webinar on that today, and I was like, yes, that is something I thought right away that would help you as well to get that message out there.
Right. Your tool is good, and what it's doing is good. Your challenge is finding people who will understand what you're telling them and pay you for it. And that's not a small challenge. I'll be honest with you. That is a big challenge. Because I think most of the people here are very intelligent, and I'm pretty sure they weren't sure about a lot of what you were telling them, not because you didn't explain it, but because of the way you explained it. And you need to be thinking seriously about changing that to get the market. The tool is not the problem. The resource is not the problem. Your challenge now is learning to communicate this in a way that you can sell it. That's a whole different problem than making it and using it and applying it. It's a totally different set of shoes and totally different set of skills. And many people, what they fail at in business is they know the business, but they don't know how to sell or market. And
that's why I've been doing this for quite some time.
I hope I helped. I hope to.
This is valuable. In answer to Robin's query, I've been getting myself invited onto podcasts for a little over a year. So this is going to be around the 80th
that helps.
Thing that I've done. But it took me something like 3 years to just not only talk in terms of calculus. I remember one of the first attorneys I was speaking to. If any of you are ever patenting anything, you can't tell anybody about it until after it's in, because public information cannot be patented. And so the go-to question for attorneys is always, have you told anybody about this? And I said, well, I told you what the problem space is and what the approach is. And so mathematically, I just told you what it was. And they said, okay, cool. You've never told anybody what this is.
That's correct. So if you've done that many podcasts and you're still speaking this way, in your presentations, you need to do a very, very serious deep dive on what you're doing, because your product isn't your problem. Your problem is your presentation to normal people, not you. You're exceptional. I think we'd all agree with that.
And you said most of us.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
which one did you include? You said most of us here are intellectual enough.
I don't think anyone in our club is below average. I think everyone in our club is intelligent, and I feel that his level is so high above where we are in that area of math, in the math area.
Of our club is below average.
No, I'm not saying that. So
He's talking
anyway,
about
I'm just saying that because I've had similar problems with my marketing as well. It doesn't matter how good the product is. What matters is, can you make other people believe it enough to pay you to get it? And right now you're not doing that at the level you need to be a success. I can tell you that from observation, and I'm not saying that to hurt you, I'm saying that to help you.
No, thank you very much.
I got to think, what about using metaphors? Is there a way to use metaphors? Because I know so I'm a certified hypnotherapist, and I know that metaphors is one way that we use to help people. We tell stories that way. That's how we all tell stories, is through metaphors, and then people understand it better. So I'm just thinking, like Milton Erickson, he was really good at using plants as like a person. When he would tell a story, he would use a plant, for example, like a tomato plant, and how the tomato plant, how it can grow and how we can grow our dreams. And then people would walk out of his office, they'd be like, he was talking about plants, and then they wouldn't smoke again. So I'm thinking, like, is there something like metaphorically you could use as this? Because I was in a dumb math class, so I never did the calculus and all that. I was in the dumbed up.
Well, the thing I was talking to you about before, where you can find the balance point of a rod by just kind of moving your fingers together.
But it's like, even for me though, that's too much, because I don't understand math. I mean, like, because I understand what Howard's saying. You're like, I'm not that great at math. So for me, I didn't understand it. I understand bits and pieces of like what you're talking about, and I agree with Howard. It's amazing what you're onto. I'm just like thinking like how to help you out. That's why I'm like, well, metaphors I know would help to help sell that story. That 16 undeniable laws would help. The other thing I was thinking too is I know I've been told, because I go above and beyond myself in my expertise of where I'm at, it sounds horrible. The reality is because of computers, because of things, we really have to dumb it up for about that third grade level, that 9-year-old age. And the best way that one person had told me for marketing is it has to be so simple that a 5-year-old could tell you what you do. Like my 5-year-old, he's here, he tells me all I do is sleep and be on the computer. That's pretty much the basis of my job. I tell people to sleep and I'm on the computer. So I feel like it has to be that simple, if that helps at all.
Yes, I agree. And that's what you need to be thinking about to make this work as a business, because you're so brilliant at what you do, you don't realize that what you're telling people is so out of their wheelhouse that they're having trouble. Now, I'm not saying that's true for everyone, because I'm sure if you're doing what you do with people in commodities, these are people who know numbers. These are people who understand selling and commodities. But
unfortunately, that they're almost worse than the hoi polloi. The issue isn't that they're dumber than you guys are or something like that. The issue is that they're so familiar with how the system works as it stands that it's sort of even more mind-blowing for them.
Oh, okay.
I liken it to if you had created a Star Trek transporter and you were trying to sell it to like a train company in the 1800s.
That's what I'm seeing.
And they're like, "Where's the dining car?" And you're like, "Well,
That's where you are. I got to stop you because
on this
Linda
thing.
and David need to leave, so I need to close the meeting. But I hope that this helped. I enjoyed it. I found it interesting, and I hope that we made some suggestions as well for you, because I think we'd like to see you succeed at this. It sounds like you have something very valuable to offer, and hopefully the suggestions Robin and I and everyone made will help you. But I have to close out the meeting if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
I'm going to follow
It was a
up on
good-
this stuff.
Thank you. This is the end of the meeting. I'm going to just do the four-way test and we'll close out. The four-way test are the things we think, say, and do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it be goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? And fifth, will it be fun? This was a great presentation. This was the most intellectual presentation, I'd say, in 4 years that I've seen at Rotary. And that says a lot, because we've had some very good speakers. So you were brilliant, absolutely brilliant at what you did. And you're one of the first people we had where I was like struggling just to understand what you were saying. But I like that. I like the challenge. But I hope that you do well. I think what you're doing is going to help a lot of people. But to help them, they have to understand why they want you to help them. And until you do that, you'll have a problem. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care. Take care, everyone. See you soon.